You are deploying an application in a VPC. The application requires access to S3 and DynamoDB without exposing the VPC to the internet. Options: A. Use a NAT gateway to enable access to S3 and DynamoDB. B. Use VPC endpoints for S3 and DynamoDB. C. Use an internet gateway with security groups. D. Use a VPN connection to access S3 and DynamoDB. Correct answer: B. Use VPC endpoints for S3 and DynamoDB. Explanation: VPC endpoints allow private connections to AWS services without needing internet access, enhancing security. Why not other options? Option A. NAT gateway requires an internet connection, increasing costs and exposure. Option C. Internet gateway exposes the VPC to the internet, violating the security requirement. Option D. A VPN is not necessary for accessing AWS services from a VPC. You are designing a web application that must handle high traffic with low latency. The application has dynamic content and requires SSL termination. Options: A. Use application load balancer with auto-scaling and enable HTTPS. B. Use CloudFront with an S3 bucket for static content and a backend EC2 instance for dynamic content. C. Use network load balancer with EC2 instances. D. Use elastic Beanstalk with a classic load balancer. Correct answer: A. Use application load balancer with auto-scaling and enable HTTPS. Explanation: ALB supports dynamic content routing, auto-scaling for handling traffic spikes, and SSL termination for secure connections. Why not other options? Option B. CloudFront is not ideal for dynamic content requiring SSL termination. Option C. NLB doesn't support application layer routing for dynamic content. Option D. Classic load balancer is outdated and lacks modern features like dynamic routing. Your company requires a solution to synchronize data across AWS regions with minimal latency. The solution must support a relational database. Options: A. Use RDS with cross-region read replicas. B. Use Aurora Global Database. C. Use DynamoDB Global Tables. D. Use S3 cross-region replication. Correct answer: B. Use Aurora Global Database. Explanation: Aurora Global Database offers low-latency replication across regions for relational databases. Why not other options? Option A. RDS cross-region read replicas introduce higher latency and don't support multi-region writes. Option C. DynamoDB is NoSQL and not suitable for relational database use cases. Option D. S3 cross-region replication is for object storage, not databases. Your team needs to process large batches of image files uploaded to S3. Each file needs to be resized and watermarked. Options: A. Use AWS Batch to process the files. B. Use Lambda triggered by S3 events to process the files. C. Use an auto-scaling group of EC2 instances with a script to process the files. D. Use step functions with Lambda to manage the workflow. Correct answer: D. Use step functions with Lambda to manage the workflow. Explanation: Step functions manage complex workflows, coordinating Lambda functions for image resizing and watermarking. Why not other options? Option A. AWS Batch is designed for large-scale batch computing jobs, not serverless workflows. Option B. Lambda alone is insufficient for managing complex workflows. Option C. EC2 increases costs and operational overhead compared to serverless options. Your organization plans to create a data lake to store and analyze petabytes of structured and unstructured data. You need a cost-effective, scalable, and durable solution for storage and querying the data. Options: A. Use Amazon S3 for storage and Amazon Athena for querying. B. Use Amazon RDS for storage and AWS Glue for querying. C. Use Amazon DynamoDB for storage and Amazon Redshift for querying. D. Use Amazon EBS volumes attached to EC2 instances for storage and SQL queries. Correct answer: A. Use Amazon S3 for storage and Amazon Athena for querying. Explanation: S3 provides cost-effective, scalable, and durable storage for data lakes. Athena enables serverless querying of data stored in S3 using SQL. Why not other options? Option B: RDS is not suitable for unstructured data and lacks the scalability required for a data lake. Option C: DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, unsuitable for data lake use cases, and Redshift requires structured data. Option D: EBS volumes are expensive and not scalable for petabyte-scale storage. You need to implement disaster recovery for a critical workload running on EC2 instances in one region. The recovery point objective, RPO, is less than 5 minutes, and the recovery time objective, RTO, is less than 1 hour. Options: A. Use AWS Backup to replicate the EC2 instance snapshots to another region. B. Use AMIs to create identical instances in another region and keep them in a stopped state. C. Use CloudFormation templates to recreate the infrastructure in another region. D. Use AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, AWS DRS, to replicate the workload to another region. Correct answer: D. Use AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, AWS DRS, to replicate the workload to another region. Explanation: AWS DRS replicates workloads in near real-time, ensuring minimal RPO and fast recovery, RTO. Why not other options? Option A: AWS Backup doesn't provide near real-time replication. Option B: stopped AMIs don't meet the RPO requirement as they need to be updated frequently. Option C: CloudFormation takes time to deploy infrastructure and is not suitable for RTO under 1 hour. Your organization wants to allow EC2 instances in a private subnet to access a private S3 bucket securely without exposing the subnet to the internet. Options: A. Use a NAT gateway for internet access and configure S3 bucket policies. B. Use an internet gateway with strict security group rules. C. Use a VPC endpoint for S3. D. Use AWS Direct Connect to access S3. Correct answer: C. Use a VPC endpoint for S3. Explanation: a VPC endpoint for S3 allows private connections to S3 without internet exposure. Why not other options? Option A: a NAT gateway introduces additional costs and requires internet access. Option B: an internet gateway exposes the private subnet to the internet. Option D: direct connect is unnecessary for accessing S3 from the same region. Your company is migrating a 2 TB SQL database to AWS. The migration must minimize downtime and maintain schema compatibility. Options: A. Use AWS DMS to migrate the database to RDS. B. Use S3 to upload the database files and process them with Athena. C. Use DynamoDB to migrate the SQL database. D. Use AWS Snowball to transfer the database and import it to RDS. Correct answer: A. Use AWS DMS to migrate the database to RDS. Explanation: AWS DMS enables near-zero downtime migrations and supports schema compatibility. Why not other options? Option B: Athena is not designed to process relational database migrations. Option C: DynamoDB is a NoSQL database and incompatible with SQL databases. Option D: Snowball is not suitable for online, low-downtime migrations. You are designing a backend for IoT devices that send telemetry data continuously. The backend must handle millions of devices and scale automatically. Options: A. Use AWS IoT Core with DynamoDB for device data storage. B. Use EC2 instances with an auto-scaling group and RDS for storage. C. Use AWS Lambda with SQS and S3 for storage. D. Use Amazon EMR to process data in real time. Correct answer: A. Use AWS IoT Core with DynamoDB for device data storage. Explanation: AWS IoT Core is designed for scalable IoT device connectivity, and DynamoDB handles large-scale data storage. Why not other options? Option B: EC2 and RDS increase management complexity and costs for millions of devices. Option C: Lambda and SQS are not optimized for continuous, scalable IoT device connections. Option D, EMR is designed for big data processing, not IoT device connectivity. You have a static website hosted on S3. You need to deliver the content to a global audience with low latency and high performance. Options: A. Use an application load balancer in front of S3. B. Use AWS Global Accelerator with Route 53. C. Use Amazon CloudFront to distribute content. D. Use a network load balancer with EC2 instances. Correct answer: C. Use Amazon CloudFront to distribute content. Explanation: CloudFront provides a global content delivery network, CDN, with caching and low latency. Why not other options? Option A, ALB cannot cache content or improve global delivery performance. Option B, Global Accelerator does not provide CDN functionality. Option D, NLB does not improve content delivery performance for static websites.